think that we shouldn't underestimate sort of the power of the people, and you don't necessarily have to run for local council, but you can still have your voice heard. And I think the councillors should represent the community and should listen to what the community want for the area, and that sometimes might differ between different groups, but getting all the information and sort of putting forward what will be best for the area, I think is really important.
Listen, Stokely, where we tried to be involved, to listen and learn for us all to evolve. So welcome to you and welcome the world. We hope you enjoy the stories to be told. Stokely is a creative endeavour to listen, learn and evolve through the art of conversation. And here's your host, Mael.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Stokely. Today I have the pleasure of introducing you to Kate Gazzard. Kate is a paediatric doctor who's passionate about addressing the climate crisis to protect the people she works with, our next generation. Along with the day in and day out work she's contributing to the young people in her immediate community, Kate is also using her time and energy to create change through the medium of politics on a local level. Kate's passionate about advocating for preventative healthcare, social justice and environmental protection. I really enjoyed our conversation and I learnt a great deal more about political change on a local level and life on the front line of the COVID-19 situation we're currently seeing in Melbourne and its impact on our younger generation. So I'd like to pay my respects to the traditional custodians upon the lands which we gather to listen and create this podcast. I'd like to recognise the everlasting connection to land, waters and culture, and I'd like to pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging. So I really hope you enjoy this conversation. Please let us know what you think, and we look forward to hearing from you soon. Thanks a lot. Hey Kate, thanks for joining us today. How are you going?
Good, thanks. How are you?
I'm great. Yeah, I've had a really nice day. Wild weather and all of that as we pop into spring, but things are going good. Things are going good. So Kate, it's been great getting to know a little bit more about you, especially throughout this year, really. I remember meeting you for the first time with your good friend and my good friend Hilary down in the great northwest of Tasmania, and down there for the Tarkine Ultra, which was sweet. And so, yeah, you're someone that I really wanted to speak to because I feel like, being someone in a similar age bracket and doing some really incredible things for your job and also like what you're moving into with your new role, kind of running for council and things like that, I feel like you could definitely teach myself and a lot of other people out there a few things about how to navigate the world. So how does that sound? Do you mind enlightening us?
Yeah, I'd love to. I don't know if I have much wisdom to impart, but whatever I have, I'm happy to share it.
Awesome. Well, as long as you do that humbly, then that would be great.
Yeah.
So, so maybe you could give us a little bit of an intro to yourself, Kate, and kind of what you're doing in these current days in the world that we live in.
Yep. So I guess to start with, I grew up near Ballarat, in the country, and we had an alpaca farm and had horses, and spent a lot of time outdoors, and feeling connected to nature was a big part of my childhood, and going camping and going to the beach was often something we did on holidays. So I always sort of felt that love of the coast and always wanted to live on the coast. And my mum was, I think we'd consider ourselves greenies. We always would involved with the local land care group and tree planting and working bees and stuff like that. And then I moved to Melbourne to go to uni. And I studied medicine, so that was a 5-year course at Monash, and then graduated and was working in Melbourne in hospitals, and I'm specialising in paediatrics, so that's children's health, which is sort of a 5-year training program. 6 years, but it's taken 5 years of uni, 2 years in between of intern and resident year, and then 6 years of kind of specialising. So what's that, like 13 years so far. And yeah, I've still got a year to go in just completing my training, but working in the hospitals. And at the moment I'm working at Geelong Hospital, and so my partner Ed and I moved down to the coast at the start of last year, and haven't looked back. Now love it down here, and we have the beach at our back door, and we've got chooks and bees and a veggie garden, and kind of really feeling a lot more settled and wanting to kind of be a part of the community. And I think the difference from when I was living in Melbourne, I lived in the same house for 6 years, and I never met the neighbours, and wasn't invested in the house or the garden. We didn't have much space in the courtyard, so I didn't really do gardening or anything like that. And now having our own space, and we can grow our own food. Within a week of moving in here, we met all the neighbours sort of across the road and next door, and they're always rescuing the chooks when they run away, or we'll give them eggs in payment. And it's a really nice community down here. And so that's kind of how in feeling so settled, I think I want to be more involved in the community and think that I can actually make some positive change on the local council.
Nice.
So it's a big learning curve. And I really hadn't ever thought about politics sort of until the last couple of years. But yeah, I think, it's possible, and you can get involved even if you don't necessarily have experience, but if you have the passion and the drive, that you can actually, influence people and hopefully motivate people to make local change.
Yeah, unreal. Because, we're definitely going to get into a fair bit of your, I guess your next adventure in running for council and what that all means. Because I think it's super interesting, when I think back, when I was growing up, and I actually worked for the local council when I started first engineering, and we were in the, building roads and all that kind of stuff, building roundabouts. And whenever I thought about council and the mayor and all those members of authority and I guess governance, it was always almost thinking back to a lot of the teachers that I had at school. It was like real dinosaurs, They were all pretty old. They all look like they'd definitely done a few summers in a pretty hot sun. And now, so it's really cool to be able to see, people like yourself and other people of a much, I guess, younger age, getting really active in things like politics, and also just being kind of change leaders in the space, whether it's, advocating for animal rights or, so many other things. I feel like the age is coming down a lot more for people to stand up and be a voice in kind of any change that's going on out there. So I think, that's a really positive thing to see. What got you over that line from thinking that it might be a good idea to actually putting action to it?
Do you want the politician answer or the real answer?
This podcast is all about as real as it can be. Yeah. But I totally respect any answer that you provide.
Well, I don't really consider myself a politician yet. So I guess the real answer is that I've just been increasingly stressed and distressed about the state of the world and sort of what's happening with climate change and ecological destruction and, mass extinctions. And it was, really getting me down, and I didn't quite know what to do with that sort of desperation. And, I think one of the things I found helpful, even just to alleviate my own kind of anxiety about it, is working with like-minded people and taking action. So whether that's, activism and going to protests, or, leading communities to make some positive changes, if you're doing something to address it, it feels a lot less hopeless, I suppose. Because I think one of the troubles a lot of people have is, all this bad stuff's going on, and, global warming is disastrous, and the animals are dying, and, pollution's worsening, and what can we do about it? And it just seems sort of insurmountable sometimes. But I think the worst thing is to sort of have apathy towards it and just think, well, I can't really make any change, so why bother? But actually, if we all do something, if we all can make small changes even, then that can really change the way we live. And even particularly at a community level, I think local government, it's sort of, it's about roads and rubbish collection and stuff like that, but it's also about the health of your community and what the life is like when you walk outside your front door. Is it highways and big buildings and concrete everywhere, or are there trees and green places and parks and, bike paths? Are there kids running around? Does it feel safe? And I think that's sort of all linked to, the healthy, happy communities connected to a healthy environment. It's sort of, I think that's the only way that we can go forward, really.
Yeah.
But I suppose that's, how I've kind of got into it. Plus I've been inspired by a friend of mine was running in the federal election, and I had just never really considered politics. I think one of the traps particularly for young people is feeling like politics is boring, and that's kind of what we've been led to believe, that it's, the grown-ups sort of talking and making the rules. But actually, if we want to see change that actually will affect our lives, then you need to be involved, and you can't really complain about things unless you actively try to change it, I think. So Steph Hodgins-May, who went to our school, and she's an environmental lawyer, but was running with the Greens in the federal election last year, and I got involved with her campaign because I was actually just so inspired by her. Like, how did she, whenever she spoke about anything, I was like, oh, there's people who care and people who want to make a change. So then why can't I?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think you bring up so many good points there, right? Like, I think, I'm not sure if who coined that quote that is, the cure for depression is action.
Bob Brown, I think.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't get depressed, get active, I think that's right.
Action is a cure for depression. Yeah. And I mean, it's such a, I don't want to give people the wrong idea what we mean about depression. I mean, there's a number of different layers to that, but I feel like that's speaking to what you were speaking to about feeling pretty overwhelmed with things, and we can get pretty caught up with a lot of the media that gets put out there, and trying to filter through all of that stuff that we see, and trying to do that with a level head sometimes can be pretty difficult. And like you say, I think the best thing to do is just get out there and do something. And it's great that you've just like kind of been able to see someone within your circle do it, and now maybe, I don't know, be an example for others, like that friend was to you, which I think is what we all can do, which is great. So yeah, thanks in advance. You got
no worries.
You've got work to do. We've all got work to do, so I hope that goes well. But so I'd love to chat a little bit more about the work that you do now, being a paediatric doctor with children, and you work in Geelong, which is the second largest city in Victoria, Australia, I believe. So there's a fair few people there, and it's getting pretty urban around that area. There's not a whole, there is a lot of access to kind of greener spaces, not as limited as say Melbourne, but there'd definitely be areas there where kids don't really get out to those kind of greener spaces. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on, you grew up more so in the country. You said that your family was really involved with land care and things like that. And I'd love to know your thoughts on how important those elements of a child's upbringing is for their health, short term and potentially long term as well, with, knowing how you specialize in that field of health. Like, what are your thoughts on all that?
That's a very good and in-depth question. So I guess kids need, the basics of food and shelter, but they also need sort of sunshine and exercise, and to develop properly, your gross motor skills and your fine motor skills. You need to be able to run around and climb things and, pick things up and put things in your mouth and just sort of discover the world. And if that's sort of confined to, just being in a room all day, or, kids who don't have access to playgrounds and things, then it really can affect their development. And obviously exercise and physical activity is so important for not only for physical health, but for your mental health as well. And we see that even in young kids. There's even just biochemical imbalances you can get. You need vitamin D, which you get from the sun. We know that we need fresh air and we need that, outdoor kind of activity to be healthy. And I think there's a real loss of connection to nature in, particularly in urban areas. And, some kids won't necessarily see a tree every day, or won't always have time to, go and walk amongst nature. So you lose that appreciation for it. And they've done studies that have shown that, just by being in a green space, even for a weekend, it boosts your immune system. Like, physiologically, they can do tests and show that you've got better immune function after spending a weekend, out in nature in the trees. And so also that appreciation for natural environment comes from experiencing it. So if you only learn about it in books and never actually see it, you're not going to feel that same kind of connection, and probably not feel the drive to want to protect it. So there was a study in China, I think, where they got a group of 8-year-olds and they'd spend an hour each day in the park. And at the end of that, their mental health and their enjoyment of nature was, after 1 month, was so much better. And then they wanted to protect nature and then would educate their parents more about it. So I think kids are really a drive for, not only for wanting to protect the future generations and allow them to experience the same things that we get to, but they can appreciate it, and they want to. I think they're driving a lot of the change with, the school strikes for climate, and it's alarming seeing the amount of animals dying and, going extinct, and to think that potentially koalas would go extinct and, our children might not get to grow up and see koalas in the wild would just be devastating. So kind of tangented off the answer there, but...
No, not at all. I think... I think you hit it on the head, and it only brings up, I guess, more questions from my side of things. Because especially now with this COVID situation and what people call social distancing, which is like essentially physical distancing, more to the point, but there's a huge element of that where, people are not traveling outside of their houses a lot, and especially in Melbourne at the moment, where kids are really kind of kept out of the schools as well. They're not really able to go out into the playground as they probably normally would 3 or 4 times a day. Have you seen like any ramifications from that in the last year with everything that's going down? And can you give us a little bit of insight to that world?
Yes, absolutely. There's been huge ramifications not only from the health point of view, but what we've seen a lot is a lot more mental health presentations, and I can't speak so much for the adult population, but in kids and particularly, I think teenagers, have been more affected, probably because they've got an increased awareness of what's going on and that actually everything is pretty scary and pretty stressful, but they're feeling isolated at home and, can't mingle with their friends like normal teenagers should be able to. So in the hospital, the mental health presentations we're seeing has gone up hugely. Suicide attempts and a lot. There's been, I think, like double the amount of eating disorders, which, is probably, it's all about the feeling of control, right? Like suddenly we realise how little we have control over our lives, really. And so some of the ways of coping with that is controlling the things that you can. So, what you eat or, how you interact with people. And it's, even as an adult, it's scary and feels really sad to not be able to see your friends and family, and you feel, I think, disconnected. And I'm lucky I still have a job and get to go to work and have human interaction most days. But it kind of wears you down, and you can see how if you're in year 12 and that's a really stressful time trying to study for exams, but you don't have all the friends around you and all the other benefits that you get from, socialising, that it would really get you down. And so we have seen a lot of that in the hospitals, as well as, we've been pretty lucky in terms of infection that kids haven't been as affected by COVID as adults, but the ramifications on the mental health side of things are pretty concerning. And a lot of the preventative healthcare has kind of been impacted as well. We're not doing as many surgeries and as many, scans and things like that, are elective, if you will, but once that wait list sort of blows out to years, things will get missed. Cancers might not be diagnosed. People won't be sort of picked up on what's, things like diabetes and stuff might be missed and diagnosed later. So that will also have a lot of issues sort of down the line. Having said that, there's been some benefits. Like, we've really seen a lot of innovation in healthcare, and we moved really quickly to telehealth and doing a lot of telehealth appointments. And I found some patients who might not actually attend appointments because they've got, don't have a car, or they've, quite a chaotic household, and they might not remember when their appointments are, or, might have a lot going on, that you can actually call them, remind them that they've got an appointment, and they can do it from home. So there's been some positives that, you can still become a bit more flexible, I guess, and still have an appointment with someone, even just using a screen and utilising technology, can be good. It is a bit weird. You can't actually listen to someone's heart or lungs, but you can still sort of video face to face and get an idea of how they're going. Yeah.
Surely that kind of, that's not too far away. If all of this keeps going the way it is, and you do a lot more appointments via telephone, I wonder where that whole world's going to lead to. I'm sure, it's a technological thing, and I'm sure someone's planning ahead for it. Anyway, let's not go.
It's definitely, it's already, one of the limitations was billing. So Medicare would only bill for, if you're a certain distance from the hospital, then you're allowed to do telehealth. Whereas now everyone can do a telehealth appointment. So I hope that stays.
Yeah.
And things like, my partner works for one of the online emergency, so it's a emergency doctor who then gets diverted ambulance calls to hopefully reduce the amount of people needing ambulances to be transported into hospital.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't necessarily need to come into hospital for treatment, or, maybe don't need a lights and sirens ambulance to get in. They might just need, someone to transport them.
Yeah.
So that's a better distribution of healthcare, and, reducing costs of not needing to use as many ambulances, but still making sure everyone gets good access to healthcare.
Yeah. So, it's really interesting that you brought up everything to do with, the large spike and increase in things like mental health. I was lucky enough to just watch the documentary called The Social Dilemma, and one of the things that really stood out in that were these graphs that they showed that really, kind of brought this really clear vision to viewers' minds that from around 2010, 2011, there's been, since 2010, 2011, there's been huge increases in suicide rates and rates of depression within, people between the ages of like 10 and 15, I think. It was like something like up like 180%. Just incredible stats, which is really hard to comprehend. And that you touched on it, like, because this COVID situation is also looking like it's increasing those numbers. So do those two things, the solutions and the things that children and teenagers can put in place, would do they tackle both of those issues at the same time? Or is the issue that kids are experiencing essentially the same, and can they be treated, and how are they treated? Like, what do you tell them to do?
Yeah, so this is a really tricky area with, mental health is kind of under-resourced already, and in my experience, particularly child and adolescent mental health, there's a very good service for when kids are in a real crisis, and the kind of, I guess, pointy end where, if you're actively suicidal and needing help, then you can be admitted to hospital and have treatment. And then there's the kind of the milder end of the spectrum where, if you've got some anxiety, you can see your GP and get some psychological counselling, if you can afford it. There's not as much kind of Medicare available for counselling, so sometimes it's sort of left to the GPs. The real kind of area of need is the middle zone, where you want to prevent them from getting to the sort of crisis point and, suicide attempts and self-harm and going into that really dark place. And you want to, maintain their mental health. But there's not the kind of middle ground of, you don't need an acute hospital inpatient admission, but you're a bit sicker than just being able to sort of talk through it with your GP. It's really lacking, I think, and it's a real challenge. So at the moment, it really depends on the family, and recognising that the child or young person is unwell, or that they're struggling, and sometimes it's really hard. We hope that people will ask for help when they need it, but a lot of the time they don't have the insight to ask for help or realise that they need help. And so it's a really difficult area. And there's the Royal Commission, they're trying to improve mental health throughout Victoria and Australia, but it's hard to know where to kind of channel the resources, and they don't have enough money. Really, ideally everyone would have some counselling sessions, even proactively, to make sure that your mental health is in check. And preventative is prevention is better than cure. If everyone can do some meditation, do yoga, or do what's important to you, and talk through your issues and work through, if they've had previous trauma, or if they've got a family history and underlying problems, really addressing that early on and giving them good coping strategies. But unfortunately, we don't really have that. A lot of it's sort of up to individuals and families, and having good teachers and pastoral care at schools is really important. But unfortunately, a lot of kids do slip through the cracks, and really depends on your sort of social network and your family. So I don't have the answer. I mean, the best thing would be if there was just unlimited resources and we could pour it into mental health and make sure everyone had access to everything they need. At the moment, I think training doctors to be able to deal with more and more mental health presentations is one area that they're focusing on. As a junior doctor, like I did a psychiatry term, which was very helpful for my training. And even if you don't go on to become a psychiatrist, like mental health is so important, even for every patient you see. And there's a lot more and more, especially in the emergency department and sort of emergency situations, that you can't really necessarily heal the body if you can't sort of link that in with their mind and make sure that both are working well. It's really hard, and it's really hard to see kids struggling or anyone struggling really. And sometimes you can't always help them right away. I think just trying to offer it each time, and once people are ready, then they'll hopefully ask for it. But
yeah, and far out. I mean, I think these are pretty tough conversations to have sometimes, in terms of it might not be for you, but I feel like it can be quite uncomfortable to really open up into that world of discussion about mental health, because I feel like when I was brought up, it was almost like that taboo subject in a way. It wasn't. I feel like it's a lot more kind of openly encouraged to speak about those elements of health these days, which is great, and it's needed, as you say. Like, it's such a huge element of overall health. Not just having a physical ailment is the biggest issue. I think having something that is mentally getting you down is equally as bad. So it's great to be able to touch on those things. Do you have any thoughts on, and this might not be something that we can chat about, I don't know, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but how much can we improve things like mental health through getting outside and using the environment as one of those tools, like you said, like meditation or yoga or journaling or speaking to a psychologist or getting help? Does it also have a place in the future of mental health and physical health as well?
Yeah, I think so. I think one of the biggest mistakes we've made in medicine and science is the separation of physical health and mental health. I think they are so intrinsically linked. But throughout our training, you get taught all of the anatomy and the biochemical, biophysical, physiological side of things, and you learn things like neurotransmitters and how dopamine and serotonin and everything trigger certain feelings in the brain, and you can explain it scientifically. But actually, then knowing that is different to saying, okay, well, we know that spending time outside and doing physical activity is good for, your serotonin stores, and connection with other people can help boost certain neurotransmitters. But we don't prescribe, we don't say, okay, you have to go and spend half an hour sitting by a tree, or, go and swim in the ocean because that'll fix everything. But maybe that's what we should be doing, is saying, while you need to look after the physical illnesses, we can probably prevent a lot more of that by having people be more active, spend more time outdoors, fresh air, connection with other people. And I think we would all be healthier. You see the kind of communities where there's people running in the morning, and everyone's active and outdoors, and everyone just looks so much happier than when you're kind of the daily grind in the city getting to work. So yes, I think absolutely we need to connect to nature to also connect to ourselves. That sounds a bit lame, but
No, it's like that's the I think that is the issue, right? Like, I'm not having a dig, but like that sounds lame. Is like that's the thing, right? Like it's not lame. It's like it actually helps. Like this is the stuff that we need to embrace, not like think back to what we've been taught like growing up from our society that like, yoga's for hippies and meditation's for like woo-woo people and things like that. It's like, let's get the facts straight here. Let's figure out what's the issue and let's embrace all the things that can help change it. And like you say, maybe swing it back to like looking at the most basic things, like going for a swim in the ocean and getting connected to all the natural things that you connect to when you swim in salt water and feel the wind on your face and understand that like there's a whole body of sensation that you can run through when you do step up to a cold pool and you have to get in it, and experiencing all of that, and not being told that it's too lame to get involved in, so yeah, I think that's incredible. And I think for me lately, looking into a lot of as well kind of knowledge from the First Nations people and how connected they are to the land and the waters and the culture, and how that plays such a pillar of importance in their life, and how we really don't have that, and how that is not really a part of our, I'm not saying everyone, but it's not really a part of our education, especially going to school.
I think we should be taught that from First Nations people, is that connection to the land and wanting to look after the land. Not just standing on concrete, but having your toes in the sand and feeling it. It's almost a visceral feeling sometimes. I think when you do just take it all in, like look up at the stars and feel like you're a tiny little person on a tiny little blue dot, and actually everything that you've been worried about doesn't really matter, because there's so much more important stuff out there, and actually we're just a very small part of that.
Yeah, definitely. And before we know it, we're just going to be a bit of dust floating in the air, which will just go back to the ground, and the cycle of life continues, really. So
very Lion King.
Simba.
The antelope eat the grass. We become the grass.
But like, isn't the Lion King? Doesn't that that's got like some incredible learnt teachings in it?
Oh yeah, it's one of my all-time favorite movies.
What have you lived by that you learnt from the Lion King?
Oh, Hakuna Matata. No worries.
Yeah. No joke. Like I think it's like, again, it's great stuff. Like it should be.
Yeah.
Should be encouraged. I don't know.
You can go deeper and say that it's a retelling of Hamlet, because the brother tries to, the uncle tries to murder the heir to the throne, but I don't read that far into it. I just like the music.
The sing-alongs. Don't they say that like it's the arc, right? Like a story arc. Like the hero's journey is like there's this like underlying theme and current and arc that is present in all of those kind of classic stories, and like you say, Hamlet or The Lion King, and that's what makes them unforgettable in many ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, not just the costumes and the
sing-alongs
and the great tunes. Yeah, I mean Timon and Pumbaa though, you can't get any better wise yogis than those two guys. They know how to live life.
Yes, they do.
Let's I want to chat a little bit more about this next adventure that you're going to go on. So, correct me if I butcher any of the terms that are in the space that you're now active. But running for council, as we touched on a little bit before, the plan is get out the dinosaurs, get things fresh, shake it up.
Yep.
We're going to focus on a few more things on a local level because there's change to be had on a local level, and there is an ability to do that, whether you are running for council like you are, or whether you're just someone from the general public who feels like their vote doesn't really get noticed. So what can we do on that local level, or what do you hope to achieve?
I hope that, I suppose my first step is to be elected. So I hope that my kind of values and my priorities sort of resonate with people, and there's enough people in the community that want the same things and want to protect the coastline here, and make sure that we do have good preventative healthcare and good access to mental health, and green spaces, and bike paths for kids. So hopefully they will vote me in. So I didn't really know a whole lot about how the council works until this year, but Surf Coast Council Shire is sort of a big area, and there's 4 different wards. And so I'm running in Torquay ward, which looks quite small on the map, but has the biggest population of about 15,000. And so there's 4 council positions for Torquay. And I think there's 10 candidates running for those 4 positions. And then there's the Anglesey ward, the Winchelsea ward, and Lorne ward, who have, there's 4 other positions between the 3 of those. So then 8 councillors will get elected onto the Surf Coast Shire Council, and then they will be representatives of the community to sort of make decisions that are important for, the place that we're living. And so that includes things like waste management, recycling, where your recycling goes and how the bins are sorted. Obviously local roads as well, and rates and things like that, but also protection of the local areas, and whether developers are allowed in to develop certain areas, or whether actually we value it more for its natural beauty and want to protect it from overdevelopment. And so things like, there's a proposal for a 5-storey hotel on the roundabout on Bell Street at the start of the Great Ocean Road, and the community here have been advocating against it, mostly for a public area. The maximum is a 3-storey hotel, but the developers have put this proposal at 5-storey, and the council has all voted against it, but now it's gone to VCAT. So there's sort of different levels, but there's a lot of community groups who are pushing against it, and so the Greater Torquay Alliance and other community groups have really band together and are showing what's important to our community. And I think people listen to the community when there's enough people. For the Spring Creek, there was 3,000 people showed up. This was, I think, 10 years ago, to show how important they thought it was that we protect the Spring Creek Reserve. And they had Xavier Rudd play, and I wasn't here, but there was, it sounded like quite the event. And I think that we shouldn't underestimate sort of the power of the people, and you don't necessarily have to run for local council, but you can still have your voice heard. And I think the councillors should represent the community and should listen to what the community want for the area. And that sometimes might differ between different groups, but getting all the information and sort of putting forward what will be best for the area, I think is really important.
So how did you go about doing the work to identify your values as a person?
It's still a work in progress. I've always wanted to have kind of a purpose, greater purpose for, I guess in essence, making the world a better place somehow. And initially I thought, in medicine, that's one way of doing it, is you can make a difference in lots of individuals' lives and, help people in a sort of a basic sense from a medical point of view. And then as time has gone on, I think I've been much more worried about the sort of environmental destruction and the ecological side of things. So it's easy to get caught up or, bogged down with all the issues in the world, of which there are many. But I think if there's no planet Earth, then you can't really fix any other problem anyway. And so I think we need to really protect the environment before we can sort of address any of the other problems. So that sort of fits into my values, that I think the greater good is looking after our home, which is the home for people and for all the animals, and what is the best way to protect it. I haven't quite figured that out, but I guess I got a bit disillusioned in medicine in that we're doing all these things to try and improve human health and try and, save people, if you will. Yet the planet is dying. We're using up way more resources than we actually have. And kind of what's the point of looking after these kids in my day job if there's no future for them to look forward to? So I think I've really swayed a lot more to the ecological protection, and that's what I'm sort of fighting for more recently. But how do I shape my values? It's tricky to, I get a bit disillusioned sometimes with, my own impact as a human. Like everything I do has an impact. Everything that I eat or buy or drink or use, potentially has packaging or has come from somewhere, and it really can get you down if you sort of think about it too much. So I think you just have to balance that out by trying to do more good than bad. And so hopefully you can make some positive changes and inspire people to do the right thing, and that will negate all of the plastic that you've used, or all my whole carbon footprint that I've used. I don't know. It's tricky because you can get a bit angry that humans are destroying the world, but there's also a lot of really good humans, and I think when you find the good ones and realise that, okay, we can actually do this and we can save the world, then that's something that we should be doing.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, yeah, like you said, if we don't, well, the world's going to get on just fine without us.
Yeah.
As soon as it gets rid of us, it's just going to grow itself back in a very beautiful, beautiful way without any of us to cut it all down again, really. Anyway, that's a bit dark. I think.
Yeah, no, I go to those dark places sometimes as well. Yeah, especially when you see, beautiful old forests that have been cut down and the koalas climbing on the, cut down for the fallen trees. What are we doing?
Yeah. No, I think it comes back as well, kind of, especially both of us have been born in Australia, and again, the First Nations people that have been here for, 60,000 years or maybe even longer. And when you look at the things that, they consider to be a part of their health circle, it's like their family, community, culture, land, and spirituality. And I just feel like, where are we neglecting all of those? And we touched on it a bit before, and I'm kind of repeating it, but I think it's so important, right? Like, it all comes back to, like values. Like, what are we valuing? And what are we putting above something else? And I think people are just putting convenience of walking around with a coffee in a cup for 20 metres before throwing it in the bin. I think they're putting that convenience over a lot of things, and that's only just the start and a very small little example. But yeah, so you're going to be really fronting up to a lot of questions and a lot of situations. Not that I wish that upon you in any sense. I hope it happens in very minuscule ways. But you know, you're gonna to get to where you want to go in terms of running for council and everything. How do you take care of yourself and your space and really dial into what you want to present as someone who represents people, and like what are the things that you use to make sure that you're on point when you need to be?
Cool, yeah. That I'm still working that out a little bit. It's been confronting at times, and I haven't had any, face-to-face confrontation or personal attacks or anything yet.
We could do one now.
But
I could like role play.
Yeah.
Hi, my name's Dave.
Hi, Dave.
I don't appreciate the way you wear your hair. You look like a bimbo.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Anyway, let's not go there.
Thanks, Dave.
Let's get rid of Dave. Get Dave out of the room, please.
Yeah, it's. I think it's pretty new for me. I guess like it's a very different setting to, my work in the hospital where I know what I'm doing and I, know the evidence-based medicine and generally feel pretty sure about what I'm doing before I make a plan and look after a patient. This is a whole different area that, I think I still want to get all the information and still want to, make informed decisions and hopefully do the right thing from the council point of view, but that will definitely get some negative opinions. And even just by running as a Greens member, I guess it's, on one hand I get a lot of support, and we've got our Surf Coast branch who are all amazing and have, helping a lot with the campaign. A lot of people that I can use as a sounding board and can run things by. But there's also a lot of people who are, anti-green, and it's pretty interesting. I think politics gets really emotional, and it's almost a kind of a traditional, or it kind of runs in families. Like people will say, "Oh, I've always voted this. My family always voted this way, so I vote this way," and then kind of they don't necessarily listen to the policies or listen to the, what's actually being done. So I hope maybe that will change if people realise that I'm a human being and that I'm not just a political party person, but I, have my own values, and that they can actually talk to me as a human. But I've already, had experienced some trolls and some haters, particularly on social media, which that's a bit weird and kind of unpleasant, but, mostly it's just a bit funny because I think you have to learn not to take it personally and realise that it's either their issue or, it's not anything that I've done yet. A lot of it's not anything related to how I would actually perform as a counsellor. It's just their kind of sort of entrenched political view that they already hold and, might not change by anything I say. But yeah, have to get a bit of a thick skin. Yeah, going back to people favouring convenience over, using a coffee cup for 20 minutes, and I think that's something that we want to move away from. But also it's just the society that we live in that I don't think we should be blaming individuals. I think that the change needs to come from kind of top down. And so if you can make a change at a local government level and that just infiltrates through, that just becomes the new norm. And I'd like to believe people want to do the right thing most of the time. And if we can make that the easiest thing, then that will just kind of flow on and be the new normal, I think. But it's easy to kind of call someone a hypocrite because, you know, if you've got greens values, but you use a coffee cup, it doesn't really negate all of your, you know, potentially the good things that you've done. It's like one of my Facebook comments was about how I'm using plastic for the signs, and that's using fossil fuels. And I did gently remind them that we use recycled signs, but it's, you know, we obviously have to use some resources in order to get elected and to make any change. So, you know, calling someone a hypocrite because they do consume things, like that's sort of just that's the world that we live in, and you have to use things. So it's a tricky line to tread sometimes though.
Yeah, no, it is. We have just being a human being, we have a, you know, inherent impact on the planet, and we need to just be aware of that as the first point, and then identify ways in which we can make a change. And like you said, like it's not always so simple for people to make such a change so quickly, you know, and there's a psychological element, there's also a logistical element to that as well. And yeah, it's not so much hating on people or calling people out as individuals of doing things. I think, as you say, it's kind of like understanding that this is not going to change overnight, and we have to be respectful of everyone's situation, and in some aspects meet in the middle ground and then work from there. Like find that place where, you know, everyone might have to make a compromise, but, you know, it's taking a step backwards, or finding a place where we all actually meet naturally, and then working from there without any of that emotion attached to it. And
it's hard to separate the emotion sometimes, but it's kind of a luxury to be able to try and, you know, live a low impact life. You know, I go to the local grocer and use my reusable cloth bags, and, you know, that's not always an option for everyone. And if you're not sure where your next meal's coming from, then, you know, you're not thinking about global warming, or, you know, you're thinking about how you're going to make enough money to pay your bills or look after your kids. And it's, you know, the cheapest option is the only option. So sometimes it's kind of easy to forget that and forget what other tribulations people kind of face.
Yeah, I really appreciate you mentioning that. I feel like that's something, you know, sometimes I can be riding down a highway on my white horse, yelling at everyone for doing the wrong thing, and then I realize, oh yeah, actually, you know, get off the horse, you idiot. Like, think about it in a more holistic way, because as you say, that's a big reality for a lot of people, definitely. Hey, before we close it out, and it's been, I mean, this is one of the things I really wanted to chat to you about, because I mean, just like the conversation as a whole, because I've learnt so much, and growing up, like I said, from like basically this part of the world, it's so interesting to now start to look into this whole side of how our society functions, and it's so interesting because, like we've touched on it, you know, you can have a space in that whole world if you want to. You know, nothing actually is holding you back anymore. You can really kind of get out there. You could probably even make your own plastic signs if you really wanted to, but
yeah, it's scary though, and I suppose you have to be a bit uncomfortable before you can actually do anything good though.
Yeah, I mean, now you're like, you know, you've got signs of your
a
portrait
giant face of me all around.
Yeah, it's incredible.
A bit confronting. Yeah. Well, hopefully enough people like the look of me that they vote me in.
Yeah, you wonder how much that's attached to it. No, I think the photographer did a good job. They did a good job.
Oh, thanks. And the airbrushing as well. Yeah, it's something that I hadn't thought much about until really recently. But a lot of young people probably should think about it, and that what is stopping us? Is it just that we're scared, or that we feel like we don't know, we've got imposter syndrome because, I haven't been a counsellor before, but neither has anyone until they've done it. So you got to start somewhere.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I spoke a lot about this on the last podcast we did, growth mindset, and how, it's not having a fixed mindset of I can't do that. It's like, okay, that's where I want to get to, and it essentially is going to take my time and effort and a whole bunch of practice and learning to get there, and then you'll grow into it, to begin is what they say as well. So just get on with it. Just a final thing, because I saw this on your, I think I must have seen it on your page that highlights the things that you're gonna advocate for, and I saw that you're going to advocate for the protection of the kangaroos in North Torquay. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah.
Because I love kangaroos, and
I love kangaroos.
I want to know what's going on
so
there.
much. I've been contacted by one of the local wildlife protection groups about, which I wasn't really aware of, in kind of where Duffields Road goes to Messmate Road. There's a big population of kangaroos there, and there's not really any measures to protect them from being hit by cars. Like, it's still an 80 zone, and they've talked about virtual fencing, which I don't really know that much about, but I don't think is proven to be effective. So I think people are calling for a reduced speed limit to protect the kangaroos in that area, because it's, as Torquay expands and as the development sort of moves more and more north, then it really pushes the population of kangaroos further and further away. So yeah, that's something that I want to make sure that the animals still, they've got every right to be here as well, that they're not adversely affected by the increasing development in the area.
Yeah. I mean, isn't it amazing how, I think that would just be such a natural thing. You're driving down a road, you see a bunch of kangaroos, maybe slow down, check them out.
Yeah, yeah.
And just enjoy the view of kangaroos. So do you think there's a potential that we could make a kangaroo greenway through town? A highway for kangaroos where they could just jump through?
That would be amazing. I don't really know, and I don't think that would be very popular with a lot of people, but I think really advocating for protection of the the farmland and the Spring Creek area, and reducing the development and the amount of noise so that the animals can stay in have their ecosystem and still thrive.
Yeah.
Even as we it's tricky, because I live down here now and I love it, and I can see why more and more people would want to move, or come here for the day, or just for the holidays. But we have to really make sure that there's that balance of allowing development and tourism, but also protecting the local ecosystems and the natural environment around.
Hey, I just want to pull you up on one more thing as well. Yeah. What do you mean by recycling farming material? How does that work?
Yeah, so that's something that I didn't know much about at all. And someone had reached out to me about her concerns on the lack of recycling of farming material. So I guess we've got our household waste and our household recycling bins that get collected once a fortnight. But there's less incentives for farmers to recycle. It's sort of placed back on the farmer to manage their, the silos and the, the hay bales and the plastic around, that kind of thing. That I think a lot of it ends up going to landfill. And there was a plant in Dean's Marsh, which I think has been closed. So adding in more barriers that unless you're motivated to really make sure waste doesn't go to landfill, it's sort of up to the individual, whereas I think it should be driven by, council and and government to really, like, it's all our responsibility. And, you know, farmers are so important in producing food for us that it shouldn't be up to them to make decisions about, you know, because often they'll have to go with what's cheapest because it's, and if they're having to use more manpower or money or anything to actually, you know, go that extra distance to recycle, then a lot of the time they might not. But yeah.
Wow. So people can just call you up and just say, you know, I really want this to change.
Yeah.
Unreal.
Well, I mean, I'm still pretty new to the area, and I know what I'm passionate about protecting, but there's lots of things that I, you know, don't know much about farming and the resources and things. So there's people who've been here a lot longer who have particular passion projects, and I love to hear about them.
Yeah, I mean, you know, they've just been here a little longer and connected with the land a bit more and everything, and I'm sure they'll bring you up to speed in polite ways and maybe more non-polite ways, but I hope for your sake, a lot more polite ways than the other.
No, everyone's, I mean, there's been a lot of support, and everyone's been generally really lovely and supportive, and, you know, I got recognised for the first time by someone when we went, the restaurants have opened, so we're out for dinner and someone recognised me as I walked in and said, "Oh, she's on my fence."
No way.
So he's got one of my placards on his fence and recognised me even in my mask. So
excellent.
Local celebrity.
You're gonna have to start walking around with a couple of business cards or made autograph cards. Is that what people do?
Well, I'm gonna stop walking around in trackies, I guess.
Brilliant. Hey, well, I can't wait to, you know, share your mobile details and get everyone calling you about anything that they need.
Only if you're in the Surf Coast.
When we, yeah.
I can't solve everyone else's problems.
Big disclaimer there. Big disclaimer. Yep. Thanks so much, Kate. It's been great to, hear a little bit more about everything that you're doing, and, you know, a little bit about what's got you to where you are now. And all I can say is keep moving forward, don't look back, and don't let anyone get you down on those things. I think you'll do a great job, and I'm very glad to see you at this local level advocating and doing something, and who knows where that will lead to, hey?
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you everyone for taking time to listen to Stokely today. We really appreciate it. So let us know what you think, ping us a message, and we'd really like to hear your words about what you learned and how this has sparked a conversation in your own life. If you'd like to find out a little bit more about Kate, you can find out via the Greens website, which is greens.org.au, and you can just search Kate's name in the search bar. And I think that's the best way to find out what's going on. And you can also check her out on Facebook, and I will put links to that in the show notes. So until next time, please take care, enjoy life, it is a beautiful thing. And one final thing, everyone, please let us know what you think about the podcast. It's always great to hear from you. I know it takes a little bit of time, but we really do appreciate it. So take care, look forward to hearing from you. Ciao for now.